Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Toolbox. My name is Sarah Lynn. I am a mindfulness coach, as well as the owner of Bettering Youth, an academic tutoring company that blends in well-being. Today, I am very excited to be talking to you about the body's natural superpower to combat anxiety, which is the vagus nerve. For those of you who might not know what the vagus nerve is, don't worry, that is what we're going to be chatting about today. And for those who have a little bit of familiarity with it, I would love to hear your feedback. Is there anything that I share here that maybe you didn't know? Is there anything that I may have missed? I am more than happy to be a student as well as a teacher. So let's hop on in. So for today specifically, we are going to be looking at the body's anxiety response, what the vagus nerve is, and then how we can stimulate it. And at the very end, I'm going to be sharing with you why I believe this is important information and how we can use it moving forward. So a quick recap on a session that we had way back in November from overcoming overwhelm. We're going to be looking at the emotional response. So for those of you who are new here, one of the ways that we talk about our emotional response is by using the flipped the lid method, whereby we teach about the wise owl, the memory-saving elephant, and the amygdala guard dog. So when we're talking about the amygdala, that is your fight, flight, freeze response. And as I mentioned, that is known as the guard dog. So when the guard dog is initiated, it starts to bark and it starts to create a lot of alarm within the body. And so it might release different hormones. It will get the body to become engaged. Our heart rate will increase and we'll start to feel those symptomatic feelings or those physiological responses to overwhelm when the amygdala is triggered. Because that happens, our prefrontal cortex, so the wise owl, where we make all of our decisions, it gets turned off because we need to conserve the energy to respond to what our body has deemed to be a threat. Now, that is our current emotional response. It's not the most modern, however, it is what we're working with as humans. So we've talked about how there are methods that we can use in order to calm the amygdala down or our guard dog, something like mindful breathing. It really helps to increase the time that oxygen is in our body, which slows our heart rate. And then the alarm obviously becomes less severe and we can regain control over our prefrontal cortex. And then we are able to move forward with making better decisions. So where does this fit into the vagus nerve? So the vagus nerve is actually part of the autonomic nervous system, which is in control of the unconscious bodily behaviors. So anything from digestion to blinking, heart rate, and even sometimes our coughing and our sneezing. All of that has to do with the autonomic nervous system. Now, there are 3 different pathways to this, but for today, we're going to be looking at 2, the sympathetic response and the parasympathetic response. So within the autonomic nervous system, there are these 2 pathways, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic response, think about sympathy, emotion. That triggers our amygdala. So that will get our body engaged in that fight, flight, and freeze response. It will increase the heart rate. It will encourage different hormones to be released. It will ensure that we are at a position or in a state of action. Whereby the parasympathetic response is all about rest and digestion. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve within the body. It connects from the base of the brainstem all the way through the face and the neck, and it connects to each of the different organs within the body in order to communicate and receive communication. So the brain gets communication through the vagus nerve about what's going on in the different organs, but it also is able to send information from what's going on in the organs to the brain. So this pathway or this highway of information really works to control that homeostasis response within the body. If the body is not in a sympathetic response, it is going to be in a parasympathetic one, which is the digestion one. So if our vagal tone, which is our ability of the vagus nerve to respond to these different phases within our system, if our vagal tone is high, then we are able to recover from anxiety or that fight, flight, freeze response quicker. So we want a high vagal tone. If our vagal tone is low, then it means that our body takes a longer time to respond. It may also mean that we are experiencing situations whereby our body goes into fight to flight without a stimulus. So this is where a lot of anxiety or very severe depression may happen. So how does this all work together? The vagus nerve is known as the wanderer because it connects right from our brain throughout the entirety of our body. So it has a really important role of communicating. One of the ways that we can initiate the vagus nerve and find support is through subcutaneous stimulation. Subcutaneous just means under the skin. And this is important for individuals who may experience or may have drug-resistant epilepsy, rheumatoid arthritis, or any other form of inflammatory disease, or very severe drug-resistant depression. They've also clinically tested how stimulating the vagus nerve can support those who have anxiety. And this is what we're going to talk about a little bit further on. But let's first look at the facts here. So when we stimulate the vagus nerve, it is going to encourage the parasympathetic response to occur, which will allow the body to recover from a situation whereby the body gets initiated and ready for action. This is really important for individuals who experience a lot of inflammatory disease and severe pain because their body is constantly in that overdrive of stress. So this is also important for individuals who experience PTSD. There have been many clinical trials that have suggested that vagus nerve stimulation is a really powerful tool. However, there are two caveats to this. The first is the expense. It is very expensive for individuals to obtain this subcutaneous stimulation. It is actually a wire of sorts that gets attached to the top of the chest and into the neck, and it will physically send out a stimulus or a pulse to the vagus nerve to help restructure or rebalance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic response. The second caveat is that it takes 6 months to 1 year before we can start seeing any of the benefits of the vagus nerve. So there have been a lot of studies talking about how it does help. However, the length and the cost makes it a last resort. So what are we talking about this for? Another method that we can stimulate the vagus nerve is by doing it in a non-invasive fashion. So I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of different ways, and then at the very end, sharing with you how I think this is going to be helpful for you and your family. So first and foremost, we talk about belly breathing. One of the reasons why we really hone in on belly breathing here at Mindful Toolbox and Bettering Youth is because of its power to not only encourage our thoughts to focus in on one thing, thereby allowing all of our other thoughts and worries to fall by the wayside, but belly breathing actually encourages a lot of movement in the body where a lot of tension might be held. So if we're able to breathe right down into our belly, we're creating diaphragmatic pressure and allowing more movement to even happen in our intercostal ribs, as well as the back body, which means that people who tend to hold a lot of tension in their back, neck, and shoulders, even their hip flexors, will start seeing a lot of release when they start encouraging that 360 or belly breath. The next way that we can initiate or stimulate the vagus nerve is through gargling and singing. One of the interesting things about the vagus nerve is it actually connects to the back of the neck. So those of us who have a lot of talking to do in our job, or if we gurgle or sing or even hum, it can actually initiate the vagus nerve and it rebalance everything for us. So individuals who might be feeling a little bit lower or anxious, give gargling or humming a go. You never know. It might be the exact trick that you needed just to kind of rebalance everything within the body. The next one is cold water submersion, right? Wim Hof, we've heard so much about the power of cold water, and we can start very easily with just doing a submersion of the face, or we can start including it in our routine for bathing. So starting with 10 seconds of cold water and working your way up gradually to the point where you can withstand perhaps even your entire shower. So why is this so important? There are a lot of different powerful ways that cold water submersion can support us, but most importantly, it helps to calm the nervous system down. It encourages deep breath, and deep breath allows for longer exhalation, which is actually what is calming to our body. So cold water submersion is definitely high up on that list. The next one is movement. If you've been around, you will know that I am such an advocate for daily movement, whether it's going for a nice long walk outside or an actual workout, a sport, whatever you choose to do for your movement is irrelevant as long as it's consistent and something that you enjoy. So finding ways to get that heart rate up and encourage more of a connection between the mind and the body, you will definitely see the benefit. Oddly enough, foot rubs or other forms of massage where we're focusing on specific pressure points can initiate the vagal nerve. And the main reason why we look at feet for our place to focus is because there are many different ancient and current belief systems that are grounded in the fact that below the feet, there are many different pressure points that are connected to each of the organs within our body. And so understanding how everything is connected will encourage you to see how when you might get heart palpitations, it can stem from many different factors, not simply just an emotional response. Social connections. Now, this is one of my favorites because it encourages us to really focus on our interpersonal skills. So interpersonal skills is all about how we are able to communicate and relate to others. Our social connections are also a place where we can feel safe, where we can experience laughter and fun, and of course, create really strong bonds. Social connections are very powerful in helping us to feel like we are not alone when we're going through moments of duress. So working on social connections and our interpersonal skills will help to build that vagal tone. So what is the main reason for understanding the vagus nerve? For me, it is understanding that belly breathing and mindfulness, which encourages us to be calm and still, is not the only way that we can initiate that parasympathetic response, that calming response. For so many children, sitting down and focusing on our breath or allowing the thoughts to just pass by doesn't work, especially for our neurodivergent students. We need to make sure that we're offering them a variety of different resources and tools that they can try to help get the benefit and relief that they may be looking for from something like anxiety or depression. So, the way that I use this with my students is understanding that when I'm speaking to them about how they are handling their emotions, we're talking about how the physiological responses are happening within their body because knowledge is power. But then we're looking at how their particular body prefers to engage with these feelings. So, is it more of a sit and relax and meditate, which may suit some, or is it going to be singing and dancing and movement? Both of them very different, but equally powerful, and allowing our children to see how they are not at a disadvantage for being students who move quite often or can't sit still is encouraging them to see that everyone is different and we actually can look at our differences as superpowers, especially and just as much when we're dealing with big feelings and emotions. So, as you move forward with your family, I would encourage you to look at the language that you use to communicate how their body is processing and moving through handling the rest and the initiation period, but also giving them the variety of choice to encourage them to feel confident in finding a method that's really going to suit them in owning and regulating their own feelings. That is it for me today. That was a speedy tour on the vagus nerve system, but I hope it gave you a little bit to think about. It was a great opportunity to speak with you today. Thanks for welcoming me along your journey, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care.